From the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Today is Wednesday, March 13th, 2013. My name is John Dittmer, and I'm here in Tchula, Mississippi, with videographer John Bishop to interview Mrs. Matilda Julia Burns, a leading civil rights activist in the Humphreys County movement. This interview will become part of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Ms. Burns, we're delighted to be here today, and we thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, thank you very much. I hope I can be of some service to you all.
You will, I'm sure. We would like to start by talking about where you were born and raised and your family.
I was born and raised in Greenwood, Mississippi. And the family was one brother and three sisters. Mother Margaret Griffin, father Trevania Griffin. By the age of 3, we moved to Humphreys County.
Why did you do that?
Well, at that time, in the early 40s, the government was purchasing land to give people their own home. Mm-hmm. So my father took advantage of that situation because we were living in the city of Greenwood on the street, so to say. No place to play or nothing like that. So he decided that we all go to the country. So we moved to Humphreys County, and under that setup, we bought a government plot.
The Farm Security Administration.
Right, Farm Security, I guess. So anyway, we got, I think it was 123 acres of land to farm and et cetera. And that gave us stepping stone to progress. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what did you farm? You plant cotton? Or?
We had cotton, corn, can, truck patch, and we had chicken, hogs, cows, guineas, ducks, and everything you could name.
Full farm.
Full
wow.
Forest, right. Had our own little never land, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah. Well, and how large was your family?
3 boys, no, 1 boy and 3 girls, mother and father.
Where were you on that
I'm
day?
the second one on the list.
Second one on the
second
list.
child.
Okay.
My brother's older than I. Mm-hmm. Now he's in Buffalo now, but I have a sister still on the home place in Silver City.
Oh, really?
And I have a sister in Chicago and one in Oak Park, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
We're the only 2 here in Mississippi. Everybody else left.
A lot of migration out of the state.
Right, they did. They left. My brother left earlier than anyone because he wanted to help me go to college. Mm-hmm. I finished high school and he decided that he was going to help me go to college. My father thought it would be best for me to stay and get an education. Mm-hmm. So he went to went to New York and got a job with General Motors. And that's how I got my education. Mm-hmm. He would work and send money back home to help me get an education.
I see. Mm-hmm. Growing up on the farm, did all the kids pitch in? Did you do?
Everybody had to pitch in. Unfortunately, my mother passed when I was only 13 years old, so I had to shift position early in life to become the head of the household as a female. And my sisters and brothers my sister and brother continued to work on the farm, but I was mostly part farmer and part housekeeper, helping all the others get together.
So you had to grow up in a hurry.
I grew up overnight, real overnight. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what about your schooling? You had moved out of Greenwood before you were in the first grade.
Right, moved out of Greenwood by the age of 4, if I can remember correctly. But my brother was 6, and we moved into the Humphreys County area near school. And my brother was the kind of person that they would always pick on. So my mother was a teacher, so to keep her from being in the middle of the children fight, I went to school too. So I was the one who was fighting for my brother. He was starting to fight, but he couldn't do nothing with him. So I had to fight the big boys off of him.
Wow.
So that made me get a start in school early. So I started in school when I was really about 4.5 years old, or maybe 5. And being at home with my mother, naturally she was going to teach us how to read and write. Yeah. I was able to do my reading and writing, and I got the little do-funny little paperback book, find another do-funny a little bit harder, and found a hardback book in 1 year.
Wow.
And so many words, in that time it was considered 3 grades. So that's the way I moved on up. and eventually caught up with my brother. He was ahead of me, 2 years ahead of me, but I eventually caught up with him, and we went on through high school, grammar school and high school together.
And he was how much older?
2 years older than
So
I.
you skipped 2 years then.
I skipped made 2 years in one.
Tell us about the school.
During that time, it wasn't a plantation school, but it was old. It wasn't an old building either, but it was old timey because they had the pot-belly stove to heat. Children had to get wood to start the fire and keep warm and everything. At that time, there was two teachers in the whole big room from 1 through 8. So.
So how did that operate during the day?
During that time, it was marvelous because the two teachers was, I guess you would call it now, a teacher and a principal,
Yeah.
because the 8th grade person was the overseer. It went well.
And you learned from the classes ahead of you too, didn't you?
Yes, I did, because
I was
a
in the
big open
situation-
setting.
I was in a situation with 2 classes. The upper grade was always more interesting than mine.
You could hear everybody's in the classroom,
Yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
How do you think the dynamics of school would be now if it ran the exact same way that she just explained?
Paying attention, you could know what the other people were doing.
There were some advantages to one room.
It was. And anyway, we made it well through that situation. And after, I guess probably 3 years, they consolidated the schools. And the children that were going to the lower part of Humphreys County, as compared to us in the center part of Humphreys County, came together. And they named the school they named the school Womack and Hodge. The Hodges were down on the lower end of the county, and the Womack was in the middle of the county. So we went to, the school then became Womack and Hodge. We stayed there until after graduation, I guess 7th grade. Then they built a new school, and they called it the Womack Hodge School, too. And that school went until 8th grade. After 8th grade, we went to Louise, to Humphreys, they're still in Humphreys County Training School in Louise, Mississippi.
Now, what year did you enter the Louise school?
Must have been in 50, 51. And that was 9th grade. Stayed there until 54. After 54, finishing high school, I went to Mississippi Valley State University.
Okay, I want to talk about it a little later.
Okay.
54 was also the year of the Brown decision. Were you
Yes.
aware of that? And
Not at that
anything?
time.
Yeah.
Not at that time. You know, it probably was in the news, but you know how youth are at that time. News is news, and if it doesn't affect anyone you know, it doesn't register with you. But later on in life, I realized what was going on with the Brown versus Board of Education.
And of course, nothing happened in Mississippi anyway.
No. That was in Kansas City, so that bypassed us quite a bit.
One of the things the state of Mississippi tried to do, anticipating Brown, was to beef up the black schools so that they could say we're separate but we're equal. Did you see any of that? Anything coming into your school that's like new buildings or materials or anything?
None whatsoever. None
didn't
whatsoever.
benefit from any of
Not
that?
at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not even textbooks.
Yeah. What about textbooks?
Textbooks, now, in my 9th grade year at Humphreys County Training School, I saw new textbooks because they introduced a class that was called Everyday Science. And there were no Everyday Science before then. So once they introduced that Everyday Science in the Humphreys County School District, that afforded us to have new books. First time seeing a new book was in my 9th grade year.
Wow. And the rest were passed down from high
Passed
school?
down from the high school.
Yeah. So and I lost my train of thought here, but you were, well, let me just go to this because it was a time, you're in the 1950s, and there is racial violence going on, and I'm asking everybody about the Emmett Till case and what you remember about it.
Recalling the Emmett Till case, I'm not good at the date now, but anyway,
1955.
55, I was finishing high school that year. we used to get what we call a Jet magazine. It's still in publication. And that's where I saw and was able to read the story on the Emmett Till
Did you
situation.
get in the high school, Jet? Or
No, no, it came to my home.
Yeah, because I didn't think they'd allow it in high school.
No, we got it at home. My mother and father were the kind of people who thought we need to keep with newspapers and stuff like that, and we did get them. And that was the magazine that we all raced to read because we could read about what other black people were doing. That's when I remember what was going on with him, or that's how I recall. I saw the picture of the body and all, which was terrible. I just couldn't believe it, but you know, it was true.
Do you remember any kind of discussion in the family or with your friends about this? Because he was, you know, not much, well, he's a little bit younger than you.
Well, my brother, my father would always tell him, be careful. Don't bother them white girls. Don't play with the white girls. Even though there were none in our community, even he said, boys go everywhere, so to say. And he had access to the family vehicle, so he was moving around. And my dad would always tell him not to whistle at them, not to play with them, you know, just ignore them. But now, believe it or not, there were some black boys in the Belzoni situation. It's the Belzoni city now. They had white girlfriends.
Oh, really?
At that time. And nothing was done about it. People would see them, they were walking together, riding together, and etc. Nobody paid any attention to it. But no one wanted to be following in the footsteps of Emmett Till.
Yeah. The trial was held and the people were set free and things sort of took off from there in terms of, well, I was telling Ms. Head that a number of civil rights activists, you know, sort of point to the Emmett Till case as a turning point in their lives, that from that point on, they realized something had to be done because that could have been then.
Yes, that was a serious time in our lives. When you look back at, no one wants to repeat that situation. And they had the funeral set up and everything and showed the body, and that picture came through in the Jet magazine, and it was just a horrible sight to see.
I want to talk about another institution in your community, the church. Was that important to?
Extremely important to us.
Talk about it.
Believe it or not, we grew up between a Baptist church and a Methodist church.
Oh, I see.
There was a sanctified church further down. So every Sunday morning, we had to be in one, the Baptist or the Methodist.
Oh,
We
you
didn't
had
have
a choice, huh?
I don't know whether we had a choice. We just had to go.
I see.
But
you couldn't choose to stay home.
no, we just had to go. But the Baptist church was closer to us than the Methodist church. We could actually walk to the Baptist church, even though we were Methodist by faith. And we would go every Sunday morning. Our pastoral day was the fourth Sunday in the month. The fourth Sunday in the month, Daddy would let us use the truck to go to our church. But anyway, we stayed with the Methodist church, but we just attended the Baptist church. If something special was going on in the sanctified church, we would call it, we would ride to see that, but some of our friends would have to pick us up because it was further down the road than our church. So religiously, we had to be involved.
You were a family of faith.
Right, we were always in one church or the other, every Sunday. Then we still, or at least I'm still Methodist.
Yeah. So you did make your choice.
Yes, I made my choice.
What were the major influences on you when you were growing up?
My major influence that I can recall was my 10th grade English teacher. Very smart lady, very smart, and she just had a liking for people who wanted to do something, and I guess she could see in me what I could not see in myself. And she suggested to me that I should go to college and major in English. And that's what I did. And I think about her continuously now, you know, what an impact that was on my life, you know. 10th grade children, they don't think about their future. You know, they're just having a good time. And by them, you know, during that time, let me back up. During that time, teachers took an interest in children's well-being and their future. All the way through high school, there was some teacher telling you what you ought to do or what you should do. And those teachers even visited the families in the community and told the parents, your child did this, your child did that, and Believe it or not, if it's good, the parent will work with it. If not, the parent will try to correct it. So she told me that I should become an English teacher. And I worked toward that end. And I went home and I told my dad, I said, Daddy, Miss Cheech, I forgot her first name, said I need to go to school to become an English teacher. He said, you want to teach English? I said, she said I would be pretty good at it. And that's what I decided to do. And he said, well, okay, well, I'll do what I can to help you. I finished school that year. My brother went off to work, and my father and I went through the educational process. And we were about 3 miles from the bus stop. I rode the bus to college. We didn't have enough money to stay on campus, so I rode the bus. And
So you were the only one of your siblings to go to college then, or?
at that time, yes. At that time, yes. And later on, my sister next to me went on, but she had gone to Chicago. She went to Malcolm X. Was it Malcolm X College? Okay, she went there.
As a former 10th grade English teacher, I'm interested in what the school class was like. What books did you read? Did you have access to libraries, to textbooks?
We had access to library books, and we could check them out and take them home with us. But not like now, the children cannot take them away from the school. They have to study them in the school. We could take them home and keep them with a week or so. Whatever you were doing with it, you could return it and, use the book to your advantage.
What did you remember reading that you
Oh, my goodness. Way back then, I was crazy about Alfred Lord Tennyson. He was a good poet, and I would just sit and read for days some of his poems. And that inspired me, too, there was another one. Oh, I can't think of it. Edgar Allan Poe was one. And, oh, my goodness, there was another one. But I just liked the reading because they were in tune to nature. I like nature and the activities that's there, so
Did
I
you
would
have
read.
any black writers that you read? I mean, Richard Wright, obviously.
Oh, yes. But I read his book, Soul on Ice, and I got mad. That Soul on Ice was so fiery, so
That's
violent.
Eldridge Cleaver.
Everest Cleaver, right, that's right. Everest Cleaver.
No, Wright wrote Black Boy,
Black Boy.
Growing Up in Mississippi.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to, I didn't like that too well. I guess it reminded me so much of what I had heard about or live with,
So talk about now, Mississippi Valley, as I recall, was a new school.
Mississippi Valley was built in 1950. I think that's when they had the first class. And I think they had 2 buildings or 3 buildings. Wasn't many buildings there, but they had an administration building and a classroom building and something else at that time. I went to school there through the, I guess you call it, classroom building. Everything was in one building. All of the majors were operated from one building. We didn't have access to the whole, building like they have now. So everything took place in one building.
How many students were?
Oh, I don't recall. It wasn't that many, because the class that graduated in 51 or 52 had 16, I think it was 16 or 32, between the two, 16 or 32 students, and that was it. Small student body at that time, but it has grown quite a bit now. Different majors.
Yeah, how many majors were there at the beginning? It must have started out small.
Education. I think that was predominantly education. It was designed to give people a chance to major in education. President Dr. White, James Herbert White, came with the idea that they needed teachers in the Delta. And he came out of Tennessee, I've forgotten what part now. Came out of Tennessee, and this was his goal, to create opportunities for teachers to be developed in the Delta area.
And so when did you graduate?
I graduated in 55. 59.
Did you do student teaching as part of this?
Yeah, we had to do student teaching. That was a requirement at the time. We had to do student teaching, and the student teacher would come out and observe you and all like that.
Where did you do your student?
I did mine in Belzoni, where I grew up, in Humphreys County. It was Belzoni. I was Magnet High School at the time. Magnet High School in Belzoni.
What was the high school like? That's something that we don't hear very much about. School life in the 1950s at the end of the segregated era.
The school life for me, I guess it took a turn for exploring. Just it was a time where I was really trying to find out what is going on and why it's going on, along with trying to get a decent education.
When you were student teaching, what were your students? Did they have aspirations to go to college, or what were they?
I had some very good students as a student teacher because I don't know where you heard of Clara Reed in Belzoni.
Yeah,
That was one of my students. But then I had some on the flip side, altogether different from her, Clara Reed and Kara Harris and several more who turned out to be very productive people.
Oh, you remember them?
I remember them. I see them. I ask about them.
Yeah.
So some of them are doing well and some of them are not. You know, aspiration for them, you know, it was kind of so-so, so to say.
And then you got your first teaching job.
I got my first teaching job there, but I wasn't married at the time. After being there for a while, I got married in my second year there. Then I went to Chicago.
Tell us about Chicago.
I didn't do anything in Chicago. The Chicago was not the place for me. That's why I'm here now.
Mississippi was in Chicago.
Yeah, Mississippi went to Chicago. Yeah, but the winter I was there, it was so cold. It must have been in 59 and 60. It was so cold in Chicago, I didn't even open the front door. My husband would come through the back door to keep the cold air from coming through the front door. So I stayed there that year, and I said,
What was your husband was working there? Or?
He was working there, working at a place called Weeboat. You heard of Weeboat in Chicago? A big department store. He was a salesperson down there. But I just couldn't take that cold weather. So I stayed in, and I promised myself when the weather changed, I'm going home. Now, I told him I was going home, but he said, no, I got to work. So I kept fussing about him going home, and we finally came home. And he started farming. And that's how we got back here.
Did he go on to your family farm?
No, he had a farm here. He had a farm. His family had a farm just like my family had a farm. The same process through the Farm and Home Administration.
So you were independent then of white people in terms economically? That you were not
Well,
sharecroppers?
kind of. No, we didn't sharecrop. But we had to go to the Farm and Home Administration for loans.
Yeah.
And that created a problem, you know. But we made it pretty good.
Yeah.
I remember one year my father made one bale of cotton. One bale of cotton. And everybody laughed at him, and some felt sorry for him as to how he was going to take care of family with one bale of cotton. But we had cows, hogs, and everything else, you know. We only had to buy sugar and flour because there was a man with a grits mill in the community ground the corner for meal and grits. So we made it. And with the orchard and all of that, we worked, but we had a decent living. Didn't have any money, though.
Did you have much contact with whites growing up?
No. We would see them passing by. But now there were two merchants in the area. There was a merchant in Belzoni, there was a merchant in Carter's. My father would trust us to go there to get what we needed. An example, we needed meat or something like that, or sugar. He made provision for us to go there and get what we needed, like that.
I've heard Belzoni was a pretty tough town.
It was.
Talk about it.
Belzoni now is, I don't think it's bad now.
But back at the time.
Yeah, back at the time it was, people were really afraid to go to Belzoni. They were leery of going. I don't know whether they were afraid or not. They were leery of going to Belzoni. And once you got in there, you picked up your items and hurry out of Belzoni. There were a family of boys down below us, the Buxton boys. They had to go to town every Saturday night, so to say. And it was always a problem with those boys because the father had to go back that Sunday morning, get them out of jail. But we didn't experience that. We knew where to stay at home. And we
I mention this because among civil rights workers, why Belzoni was known as a really tough town. And when they were having a debate about bringing in the Freedom Summer Volunteers, they said, well, we're going to bring whites down to sort of cause trouble. And one movement person said, well, let's bring 1,000 of them and put them all in Belzoni.
Belzoni could not have hold up to 1,000.
So and then after you came back from Chicago, why did you do?
After I came from Chicago, there was a principal by the name of S.V. Marshall, Marshall High School. He was the principal at the time, and I came back and told him that I wanted a job, and I was hired that same fall. At that time, school was starting in September. So we got back from Chicago in August, and I told him that I wanted to work, and he hired me for the September session.
Did you have divided sessions then?
No, it was all the same.
You were back on the 9-month schedule.
Right,
There was a
9
number of
months.
areas they
And
had.
I guess it was, no, it wasn't 9 months, 8 months.
8 months.
8 month schedule.
And where were you teaching then?
At Marshall High School, right up there on the hill that you say you passed.
Oh, I see, you were here.
Right
Okay,
here, right, I was
we
here.
got you in Tchula.
I'm in Tchula now.
Okay, you moved here with your family, and
I had one child at that time. That's my oldest son, Reginald.
and your husband was farming?
He was farming. And when he came back, at that time, the movement was just about to get started. And several people were working around getting the movement started, so he finally got a job teaching in the civil rights movement called, I believe it was SNCC at the time, SNC,
Yes,
no, SNCC. Okay, so he went there and he worked with them and finally got a job with Head Start CDGM. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, we're going to get there.
Okay. So what I'm saying, he was farming and at the same time working with the people to get the movement going. He
So-
was much more involved with the movement than I was.
Yeah. As a teacher, why, you were sort of limited in some ways, weren't you?
Very much so,
Talk
very
about
much so,
that.
because there was a man by the name of John Ball, I believe there was a John, came out of Greenwood, and by my husband being actively involved with the civil rights movement, I guess he thought I would be too. And he did. He came by the school and was telling me what was going on, and I didn't know any better. I'm standing up there in the hallway just talking to him about what I was going to do and everything, and the principal came by. And he didn't say anything, just passed by. But anyway, when John Ball left, he told me I was going to eventually lose my job if I didn't let that alone.
Okay, I'm glad, I'm not glad to hear that, but that's evidence that this thing.
Yeah, he
did
told me
happen.
that if I didn't let them freedom workers alone, I was going to lose my job. And naturally, I didn't go boldly with it, but they would come by the house in the afternoon or at night or Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. They didn't park in the driveway like people had been parking. So but my house had a driveway around the back. So they would come and park their cars behind the back of the house so couldn't no one see them.
So you were very much aware of what was going on.
Yes, so during that time.
Yeah, I had heard that a number of teachers were sort of behind the scenes doing things that they couldn't do publicly.
Right, because many times they wanted lemonade or tea cakes, and I would cook and fix them a refreshment, while they passing through. They would stop and eat with me and move on, or stop and eat, and, we share ideas. But like you said, behind the scene, I was very active, but out front, I was afraid. Not necessarily afraid, because I really didn't have sense enough to be afraid. I didn't know what to expect, but I needed to work, so I just kept a low key there.
So you came to Tchula in what year then?
63. 63.
Okay, so that was when things were really getting underway with SNCC.
Right.
With the Freedom Vote that fall, and also the Freedom Summer of the next year when there were about 30 volunteers coming in. Tell us about what you remember about Freedom Summer.
Freedom Summer for me was the time when a little man named Abe and somebody came.
Abe Osheroff, yeah.
Yeah, came to work with the Milestone community. And at that time, they were talking about building a place to meet because they were meeting in an old dilapidated church there in that same area. So Abe came in and they built that, what we call the Milestone, was it Milestone?
Center,
The Milestone Community Center. And that's where we would start meeting. Now, I could go there because it was at home, okay? But anyway, during that time, there was quite a few people were working, and quite a few people were attending this, I guess you call it the work session that they were having as to how to do when you get ready to vote and how you conduct yourselves and all of that. They prepared people to go out and vote.
Sue and Henry Lorenzi.
Well, no, prepared people to register and later to go out and vote.
Sue and Henry Lorenzi came down in the fall of '64.
Right.
remember
I
them.
remember them, yes. Remember them very well, very well. Sue was a young lady. Henry was a young fellow, and Henry told me one thing I never forget. He said, Miss Burns, you gon' no. He said, you don't. How did he tell me that? Miss Burns, you think people like you. I said, how is that? He said, you honest and fair. People are not honest and fair. I never will forget that. Yeah, he told me people are honest and fair. Now, I was honest and fair. He said, people are not honest and fair. And he looked at me just as strange.
Yeah, I've heard some Henry stories.
Oh, Henry was something else now. He would tell you just what he thought about you, though. But at the same time, he really worked hard to help the people in the community. I appreciate that, too.
So we have then the Freedom Summer coming on and the formation of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Now, was your husband involved in all of this?
He was. He was one of the ones who actually did the teaching of the registration, voters get out and all of like that. Along with, I don't know whether anyone ever mentioned to you Reverend Whitaker. You remember Reverend Whitaker? They all worked together. Reverend Russell. And there was a young lady by the name of Emanola Williams. You remember her?
No.
Emanola Williams worked in that class also. Bernice Montgomery.
Yes, and she was a teacher, wasn't she?
Right, she was a teacher too. But those are the one who, Bernice was working in, well, she came to Marston too, but I was talking about the one who really was staying. See, all of these people I named were staying in the Marston community except Reverend R.L. Whitaker. He lived here in Tchula, but he was a person who wanted to have a better life, so he would come down and work with them. And there was another young man named Marshall. Marshall was out from the Rosebank, Mount Olive community. I believe it was F.D. Marshall. You remember that name? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, they all worked together. And that's how the CDGM Head Start program got started. And they worked with that.
I'm particularly glad to have you as a teacher here teaching during this time, because it was in 1965 that a federal court ordered Holmes County to begin desegregating its all-white schools.
Okay.
Talk about that from your perspective, from the perspective of your high school and the parents of the kids.
During the year 65, I was not teaching, I was pregnant. During that time, if you were pregnant, you couldn't teach school. But anyway, my son was going into the first grade or second grade, I'm not sure. And he was one of the ones who went to the Tchula Tchula High School, which was a white school in town. The children who came out of first grade that year went to first grade at that school to integrate it.
Your son was one of those?
My son was one of them.
Tell us about his experiences and your
Well,
feelings
now,
as a parent.
As a parent, we were trying to make life better for everyone. And everybody was afraid now because they went to school and I don't know whether it was a week or a month or what have you, but the school burned down. They burnt the school down when they found out that the black people were coming in. And after the children didn't get scared and run and the parents didn't pull them out, they burned another segment of another part of the school down. They was trying to run them out.
Wow.
But my son and that group, they stayed. And
how many were in that group of black kids that integrated?
I think it was 16 in his first grade class.
Really?
I
So
don't
it was
know.
a considerable number. Then.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't know about the other class. I just remember the class that my son was in. I think it was 16 in his class. And Christopher Epps, you heard of him?
Yeah.
Christopher Epps was my son's classmate. Christopher now is Director Parchment.
Would he come home at night crying about
No,
things?
he never did complain about anything. But the teacher would whip him.
Yeah.
He didn't like getting a whipping at all. So my
Did
son
he
never.
make any white friends there? Or did
They weren't there. They left.
all the whites
They all left. When
I
the
see.
blacks got there, all the whites left.
I see. So it's just
It
a
left it
public
all
school
black.
So that resegregation happened there really early then.
That's right.
Has
That's
it
right.
remained that way ever since?
Been everywhere ever since. So they finally got rid of I think there's one building left, and that was the shop building. The shop building is there now, but they burned everything else down.
Wow.
They was determined not to be there with those black children. They went to Kruger and developed the Kruger Tchula Academy.
Okay, so
I don't know what it was called before then, but later on it turned out to be the Kruger Tchula Academy.
So here, like we grew up, we were in Jackson at the time.
Okay.
And there was integration of schools, and for a while you had black and white kids going to school together, and then the whites would pull out. But this happened just practically overnight.
It did here. Well, when they found out that the blacks, the same black group of people from Marston who were not afraid to go register to vote had children. All of those children went together to integrate the Tchula Consolidated School. And when they found out that that's what was going on, they just started burning the place down.
No.
Okay.
And then they built the segregationist academy
Right.
shortly thereafter.
After that, right.
So then you came back to school to teach in '66.
I came back in '67. I was out 2 years.
And, so talk about that experience.
That was a pleasant experience for me. I had no problem with coming back to school. I had no problem coming back to school, nor the facility, nor the setup that was there. It wasn't smooth sailing, but it was better than I was first introduced to.
What kind of opportunities were there for your students? Did many of them get to go on to college or junior college?
Many went on to college, and some did go to junior college, but at
See,
that
Holmes had
Holmes
opened by
Junior,
then, hadn't
right,
it?
it was open then. They would go right on to college.
Where would they go?
Mississippi Valley State, Jackson State, and Alcorn, and still going into a predominantly black area. That's all they were used to.
Yeah.
And by that time, really, they were the one who were recruiting those students who wanted to come. It was recently that the white institution came to recruit the black children.
Can you recall when the first of your high school students went to Ole Miss or one of the white schools?
Oh, no, that was been very recently.
Really? Because Ole Miss desegregated, of course, in '62, and there were a handful, and now there are more black students there than there are at Tougaloo.
Because we had a student who finished about 4 years, maybe 5 years ago, and he was, he enrolled at Ole Miss and he was accepted. I don't know where you heard of Antoine Patrick, the Patrick down on Marcella.
Yeah.
He finished at Ole Miss, attorney. So and that's about let me get the years straight, about 80, no, it must have been 80, 92, 93, somewhat like that.
So compare that with now. Are there more kids going to college now than back then, or fewer? Or are they going to different places?
Back then, there were few, and the problem then was because of finance. They didn't have grants and loans and fellowships and scholarships like they have now. And that made the number few because parents were not able to send them off to school. But now, you have more students, I think, going to school, but I really want to believe, I hope I'm wrong, that they're going for the wrong reason. Because I see them going to school and all of a sudden they get the grant money and go buy a car. And they drop out of school. Now compared to what happened then as to what's going on now, the majority of the students went to school then for a good purpose. They had a reason for going. But now
nobody was paying them.
That's right. Now the children are now trying to beat the system, and that's bad. But I see a lot of that in my community, in the Humphreys County.
Going to doing online college?
I hear quite a bit of that too. I hear some of the teachers are getting their degrees that way, online.
What do you think about that?
I think it's bad. I think it's robbing our students of the very necessity of being trained by people who have been trained. Now, believe it or not, those people who get those degrees online as compared to how I got mine, I just don't see them being as concerned as I was. And I'm working right along there with them now.
Yeah, well, this is certainly and you read recently where these are places where students have gotten college loans and the online universities have taken them, and the dropout rate is just overwhelming.
It is. Crippling the poor child.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn to something now that is very interesting thing, and that is state that election to win. Tell us why you ran for the school board and about that campaign. Was that your first venture into electoral politics?
It was. I ran because, like I said, keeping with the movement now. And I knew the situation when it comes to education because I've been a parent, was a teacher, and I said, well, let me do something to make it better. If I was a board member, I could do something about the problem that I was facing. So I ran and I was elected. I stayed there until 75 or 76.
Did you campaign for the election?
I did. I campaigned hard. Well,
You go out and knock on doors, or you?
not really knock on doors per se, just out there in the churches and the communities, letting people know that I was out there interested in making a better life and education for the children and the teachers, and everybody went for it. Campaigning during that time is not like campaigning now.
Yeah.
If you had a cause or a reason to go, they would support you because they wanted things to be better, and that's the way it went. That's the way it went for me.
Now, you were one against a white candidate.
Well, unfortunately, his name was not on the ballot. Let me go back. When I set out to run, he was alive and well.
Oh, I see. You shocked him to death.
I guess by the first time a black person opposed him, he just couldn't take it. And he died, was it the night before the election or 2 nights before the election? I said, when I started out, he was alive and well now.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't make it. Martin Smith, I never would forget it, down there at Thornton.
Well, so by now, the schools are overwhelmingly or totally black, and yet they're still having whites in positions of power. You
Right.
still had a white superintendent?
I had a white superintendent, white board members, white attorney, white everything. When I won the election, I think I was the second black person on the board. The others was all white. There was a lady on there already by the name of Arena C. Mallory. The Saints Academy is named for her. Dr. Mallory.
Dr. Mallory
She was on the board.
Oh, she was.
And I was.
What kind of a board member was she?
Well, Dr. Mallory was okay, but she just, how can I describe her? She saw things the way the white folks saw things. And she told me one day, right across the table from me, she said, you sitting up here, you trying to get everything them white folks ask, no, everything them black folks ask you for, they're going to make you a laughing stock of the community after a while. I just couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
Because everything the teachers and the parents would ask for, I didn't have any better sense. I went and told the superintendent and the board what we wanted. And she thought that was too aggressive, I guess, because she didn't ask for anything. She didn't bother about anything. Everything was okay for her. But she was on the, on the board, but she had the academy going.
Yeah.
There was the college, and it wasn't an academy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I'd heard a lot about her, that she was very opinionated and that she had her way of doing things, and that was the way to do it. So you were on the board with her. How many were on the school board?
5.
And there were then 3 whites?
3 whites and 2 blacks.
Talk about what issues did you deal with on the school board during the time you were there?
We deal with the issues of staffing mostly, funding, and we end up dealing with building, teacher shortage, not enough teachers, poor curriculum structure, just everything that we're dealing with now.
Now, in the schools, the whites pull out. Are there still whites teaching in the schools?
Yes, sir, we got whites still teaching.
I mean, but back then, some stayed, some went with the...
All of them left.
Oh, they did?
All of them left. The children left and the teachers left. But the academies began to phase out. All the academies. We got one, I think, in Humphreys County. That's in Lexington. So the teachers didn't have anything to do. You understand where I'm coming from now?
So where did the whites go to school if the academies phased out?
They went to the other public school. They didn't come back to Humphreys County now. They went to
So
Greenwood or Jesus.
So white flight then?
Yes, they left the educational system altogether.
And their families moved, or did they just pay to go to the other school?
They paid to go. But in Durant, they set up the separate school district in Durant. And that accommodated the white because the whites in this area who couldn't afford to pay for the academies They went to the Durant School. They stayed in operation. But eventually all of the whites left there because it was influx with black students.
So all the white teachers left, but on the school board, you hired whites to teach in the schools here?
Yes.
These were younger people usually?
Younger people with different kind of experiences.
Did they work out okay?
They did. It worked out well.
So what was the racial makeup of when you say you left the board in 76?
76, right.
What was the racial makeup of the faculty? Generally, I know you don't.
Black and white?
Yeah.
We probably had, at the most, probably 2 whites in each school. At the most. It was not necessarily a white teacher, but a white was there.
Yeah. And when did you have your first black superintendent?
The black superintendent came along with the election of William Dean. Now, I'm not sure what year that was. I'm not good with dates like that. William Dean. You heard of him?
Was it in the 80s or 90s or more recently?
Late 80s.
Late 80s. So,
Late
so
80s.
you had a white superintendent up until then.
Right, up until then.
Before we let you go, there's something that I'm really interested in having you, an aspect of your professional career that I want you to talk about.
Okay.
And that is you were an active participant in the research conducted on the black family in Holmes County by University of Illinois professor Dmitry Shimkin and his associates. And the result was a highly praised book, The Extended Family in Black Societies, published in 1968. Tell us about that project and your role in it.
That project grew out of the, like I said, the Milton Island Corporation. There was a Milton Island Corporation that helped to initiate the Holmes County Health Research Program. From the Holmes County Health Research Program, we went through house to house, door to door, studying students, studying people, and we found that there were people with more hypertension problems than we had realized. At least we didn't know what to expect. And then we discovered that there were a child as young as 6 years old suffering from hypertension. I never would forget that. That was hard to believe because I thought that was an old person disease. But that child ended up with hypertension. That was a situation where we all would meet together and they would go out and survey families' health condition. And with the health condition, they also probed into the economic condition and all of that. They would go around to see if you have bathrooms and running water and all that kind of stuff. It really was a time where the Holmes County Health Research was trying to find out what did people have in Holmes County, health-wise. And it worked out well with Dr. Shimkin and, well, can't call other name.
And what was your role?
My role was secretary of the Holmes County. Now, my role was secretary for the Milton Island Corporation, which funded the Holmes County Health Research Program. And I was just a go-between between the University of Illinois and the Holmes County people. So I was just all around, finding out what was going on, and I would communicate with Dr. Shimkin as to what we needed to do. And I would feed it to the people in the Holmes County Health Research Program or the corporation, and they would carry out those activities.
What kind of things did you recommend?
Recommended that we needed to look at economic development. We needed more money within the county. And eventually there was a program developed called Robert Kennedy Economic Development. And Representative Clark was the chairperson of that. The things that Dr. Shimkin would tell us that we needed, I would share with the community people. And they would, come up with a way of developing them. And from that also now, we talked about lunches in the school. The Holmes County Health Research Program looked at what was going on into the school, especially when the child got to be up to 3rd grade. And that's why we decided to have lunches for the children, the breakfast. We started with the breakfast because the lunch program was
What about healthcare? Did you have a component there?
in the school system.
Well, in the study, when you said you studied healthcare, were there any solutions proposed or programs initiated? Of course, you had the community health centers coming in at
Right.
some point.
Well, with Dr. Shimkin, and I can't think of this other doctor's name, but anyway, he came by and we developed a health facility something like a clinic. And from that clinic, you know, we were able to study and work with some of those people who had problems. Not eradicate them now. We studied and worked with them in order that they would have a better health. Okay.
You also studied black migration, I think, did you?
Yes, we did.
What were your findings there?
The population shift within the county. At one time, there were plantations all around. And the population shift because in the cities like Lexington and Pickens and Goodman and Durant, they built apartments. They call them, I guess, apartments. And the people on the plantation came into the city, and they left nothing out in the country. So they migrated to the city.
Yeah, well, by then sharecropping was
Dwindling fast.
Had taken over. What about, did you deal with northern migration at all? You talked about members of your own family leaving. Was that something that you studied?
We didn't study that, but we noticed that it was going on because, like I said, people in the community, they left and went to Chicago for a better job. Wisconsin, Peoria, Illinois. Believe it or not, the majority of the people who left here settled in some of those areas. Chicago, Peoria, Wisconsin, like that.
Did you study at all the impact of the civil rights movement on families?
I cannot recall. Obviously, you know, we could see that things were changing and things were getting better for them because of the civil rights movement. Many people never thought that they were in the shape that they were in until they were looked at by those civil rights workers, you know. It opened your eyes to a whole lot of things, call your attention to a lot of things, you know. I guess we were poor and we didn't know we were poor until someone told us we were poor.
Tell us a little bit about your career over the last 35 years. We've taken you up until the end of the school board. What have you done since?
After the school board, now while on the school board, I worked at Valley, English and literature, stayed there until 76. Came back into the public schools of Holmes County, and I've been working in the public school system of Holmes County ever since then. Oh, pretty good.
What do you do? Are you still teaching?
I'm still teaching now. I'm teaching 3 hours a day part-time. I retired in 2006. But they told me then they was looking for someone to replace me in my foreign language department. I teach French. And here it is 2012, 13. They haven't found a person yet.
So when did you pick up French?
I did French when I was a student at Valley. And being on the school board, you just about know what's coming down the pipe. We were trying to revamp our curriculum, make it better. And I had a chance to look at the curriculum from the state. See, I always tried to compare what our district was doing as to what the state had done or what the state had to offer. And I saw that foreign language was coming into the state. It was mandated that each child who goes into a state institution had to have a foreign language. So I said, now I can express more on my foreign language. And I went back to school and got me some French.
Where did you go?
I went to Valley. I was telling the children about it once. Miss Bourne, you went to every school in the state, didn't it? I went to Mississippi State, went to Delta State.
So you got certified in that.
Right.
Now you're indispensable.
I would go every summer, you know, nothing to do during the summer. You know, teachers don't have anything to do. So I spent my vacation in school. And I'm still there with it. And I love my job, I really do. It's something I enjoy doing, and I don't consider it a job. Now I don't, because I go if I feel like it, but I feel like going every day. God has been good to me. So I get up and go to work every day, and I have fun with my job.
Well, I just want to thank you very much for sharing.
Just one thing before, back in Freedom Summer Days, did you know a SNCC worker named Worth Long?
Ray partner?
Worth Long?
No.
Okay.
Now, he may have been up to here, but, you know, there were so many of them, and they were spaced out in the county. All of them did not come to the Marston community. So he may have been here in Holmes County, but I didn't make that name. Okay.
Just checking.
No
so
problem.
I think we're off the tape now, but on the record, thanks again.
Oh, you know you're welcome. You know you're welcome.
This video raises questions, and I need for you to be extremely honest in the comments when answering them. And just so you know, I have 2 questions. Number 1, what are the dynamics of school now compared to when you were a child? And number 2, are you afraid of change? Now please be honest in the comments when answering these questions. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.